My presentation is about the role of innovation in the energy system. The energy system is changing very fast at the moment, with lots of new technologies being produced and installed in increasing numbers, particularly renewable energy. I was first going to talk about what we mean by innovation. Innovation isn't just about people in white coats in laboratories. It's about how do we take inventions through to the market? How do you get them through that process so that they become products that consumers and businesses will actually buy? And actually that process is non-linear. It's not just a case of putting money into research and then eventually products pop out the other end. Often there is a whole series of steps with lots of feedback loops in order to get to that point. And then I go on to talk about the role of government in supporting innovation. And traditionally in energy, particularly when you're talking about tackling climate change and environmental problems, you would say governments probably have to invest some money in research because the private sector doesn't invest enough. And the second is that governments have to price carbon because it's an externality. It doesn't normally get a price of its own, so government has to impose a policy. And what I argue really is that both of those things are really, really important. But actually, if you look at a lot of the successful innovations in energy, whether it be renewable energy, wind power in Denmark, or solar power in China and Japan and the US, or even shale gas in the United States, that the government role has been much more complex than that. First, carbon pricing hasn't really been that successful in terms of reality. And so governments have intervened in other ways to create the markets for these innovations and not just support research. When I get to the end of my presentation, I start to think about, well, what are the lessons for policy? One of the lessons is that government has a very important role if we want to steer our energy systems towards lower emissions, cleaner air, and meet our climate change goals. Government really has to have a big role. The second is that role is quite complicated. It's not just a case of supporting research and pricing carbon, but actually governments maybe need to intervene in other ways to create markets, whether it be helping consumers to adopt electric vehicles early on, or feed-in tariffs for solar panels in places like Germany. But somehow to create that market and bring the cost of those innovations down is very, very important. The other point that's important to remember is that a lot of innovations are actually developed by companies, not by governments. And so governments have to work with those companies. And many of those companies are international as well. So you have to think about the global context. And that really lays on to my final point, which is about international collaboration. There's been a lot of discussion and commitment to international collaboration to support innovation. Things like mission innovation, which is 20 countries getting together making pledges to spend more on research. The Breakthrough Energy Coalition, that's private sector companies. But the question really is, can those initiatives really make a difference in pushing innovation fast enough in order to meet our goals? And of course, we have to end with the uncertainty we now face in Europe and the United States with some of the political changes, the rise of protectionism, and some of those things. Will that affect how much innovation we can get and how fast? And will it make getting to the goals we all want to see much harder than it was otherwise?